Good afternoon, everyone. Remember that dead planet Mars? Got it wrong. There's an atmosphere. Look at it. USDA updating plant hardiness map. Farmers angry. France abusive margins from supermarkets. We're going to talk about prices. Could be. How high will they go for beef, coffee? And as dark as the world gets around us, there's beauty in nature. It doesn't care if we're moving through a civilization cycle. And speaking of the tearing down of civilization, Chicago World's Fair above and what is left today at the same site, 2023. Those are massive buildings. Any of those could have been in a museum. Why did they decide to destroy it and replace it with the internal mind of CERN? This thing in itself is an entity. Out with the old tech, in with the new tech, I guess. As many await the aurora to smash our electronic and digital cuffing age, and more electrified skies is exactly what we could expect moving further into this cycle as our sun changes the frequency, stepping down off our solar cycle 25 peak. Expect glitchiness in your electronics moving forward. Speaking of glitchiness, remember how we were told Mars, it's a dead planet, there's nothing, there's no water, there's no anything, no atmosphere, this is just a dead planet. Until we look at the atmosphere in Mars. And this is a horizontal view of the orbiter mashing 10 different layer images together, and this is what we see. That looks like thin clouds to me. That looks like an atmosphere to me. What else are they not telling us about? Are some of these images that we're actually seeing on the surface of Mars that look like structures? Possibility of a past civilization that was on that planet? Because there's a lot of narrative change going on of what the black hole is, now a glowing orb, Sagittarius A. And every time you turn around, something that was truth is now proven false. Speaking of which, USDA unveils updated plant hardiness zone. They shifted everything a half of a zone more north. So here's what the new updated 2023 map looks like. And you'll see that even Puerto Rico has turned bright red down near equatorial bands. And parts of southern Texas are now in the subtropics. Now, if we compare that with the previous 2012 plant hardiness map, you notice that everything is significantly pushed further south. The colors aren't as hot. The zones are where they traditionally were. But I know you want to see them side by side to really do the comparison. Now, notice Puerto Rico, the zone has changed greatly there, and especially southern Texas and southern Florida. And another big one, too, is Kansas. If you look right out in the middle of our wheat belt in America, you'll see that everything has pushed further north on there. So those planting dates are going to be, 2 weeks closer in on the planting. Gold has soared past $2,000 an ounce. All-time record high prices. Wars in Israel and Ukraine. Rate cuts on the table, fueling gold's meteoric rise. Call the proud Americans the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention the Adapt 2030 channel. You're going to get some great in-class service. Also, Patriot Gold Group has a no-fee-for-life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. No fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call, 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. Now, I can tell you from experience out here on the small farm that we have in East Tennessee, the blossom ruining late cold that is coming in. It's the second year in a row that everything will blossom out and we'll have an early season. We'll either have 1 or 2 really deep freezes and then all the blossoms are gone. There's very little fruit coming off the trees because of that. The later fruiting varieties are really what I should have planted instead of trying to have continuous fruit drop, which means you plant early blooming species, regular at the time blooming species, and then a later blooming species. So then you have continuous fruit dropping from, let's say, the early summer all the way into late fall. And I plan my orchard around that with fingers crossed in the hope of the best. But what we're seeing here now in East Tennessee is really cold for this time of the year, for the third or fourth cold spell that has come in, this cold front. We've got frost on the ground. Yeah, we'll get frost on the ground, usually January, February, but these kind of deep frosts where it's down 21, 18, 21, 22 degrees this early already in the year, this plant hardiness map, for first-time gardeners, they're going to follow this. You know, there's going to be a lot of people start gardening when the food prices get really high. And if they're going to go by this new map, they're going to get wiped out. And that's very unfair for us in the United States to be given this agenda-driven, new hardiness zone map, when in reality, it's extremes early or late, and there's really no planting into that to try to gauge it. But the first-time gardener, unless they're planting cold hardy species rolling into, what would be early spring into the summer and then switching their summer gardens, they're going to have a difficult time. I mean, we're having a difficult time with things already, and I've been doing it for many years. So leave in the comment box below, what do you think about this switch of the hardiness map? I mean, for me, it's a disservice. They should have moved things and extended them even longer to wait, but that's just my opinion. Because we can dream big, and this seems to be the vision of how the world is. Which gives me hope looking at this image, because human ingenuity can design something like this. I know we can design systems to produce more food as the sun throws this curveball at us and lowers global crop yields. A lot of things we're seeing with supply chains right now are related to decreasing crop yields on a multitude of foodstuffs. Brings me over to France here. Inflation's skyrocketing in France. And the prices are even higher there because they add in different types of environmental taxes on the food. So the farmers, rightfully so, are saying, you supermarkets are purchasing our apples for 35 cents or 35 euro cents per kilogram. That's 2.2 pounds. And then you're selling it for €3.20. That's almost 1,000% markup. It's 914%, or a 9 times plus markup. And eggs also bought for 57 cent euro, and then they mark it up to 267. That's almost a 5x increase. And potatoes also at 40 euro cent for that, and then they're marking it up to 260, which is a 6.5 time increase. The farmers are asking for more money, and the supermarkets are like, no, we're not paying it. But then outside, everybody that's purchasing the food is seeing this ridiculous inflation, which reels me back to the main point of everything I've talked about from the beginning of the channel. You have to know your local farmers. They will absolutely sell you food. If you know them and you're able to buy from them directly from their farm, they will give you something similar. They might double apples to 70 cents per kilogram or something. Because even here, I was getting a full bushel of apples for $30. And the farm pricing here in East Tennessee, that's almost 50 pounds for $30. So that's well under what anything you could find in a supermarket. So know your local farmer. And then we're going to run through some charts here, because we can only gauge the future by truly what's happened in the past. Yeah, there could be some huge event where things just go far outside this range, but a good glimpse and a good possibility is something that's occurred in the past. So the record high prices for beef occurred in the 1970s, and where we sit today, we'll still use the same at around, let's say 200 for that. Well, it went up to 500, so you can expect another 2.5x increase in your beef price. So if you're spending $10 now a pound, you could expect $25 beef per pound. That's just based on the old highs. Now we could do the same thing here with grain prices. Now not a lot of us do barley, but that's a European thing. A lot of people are, eating rice. So if we look at the highs in rice, you either got to go back to the 1850s or again the 1970s. We're really low, say somewhere around 20 on the index, and if we look at even the highs in the 1970s, it's 140. So you're looking at a possibility of your rice could cost 7 times more than it does now. So we can look at the past to get a gauge. Now corn, since it's one of the most widely grown crops, but mainly used for ethanol and animal feed, if we go back to, say, 1920, right when World War I was raging, you see some massive increase in corn from, let's say, on the indices 20 now up to, 270. That's like a 12 times increase in the corn price. Now, for that would just take you completely out of being able to purchase food. And if we look at rye and wheat, both made for breads, etc., I'll stay with the 1970s or even back into post-World War or even during World War II rationing. We get some highs there in the late 1940s, early 1950s. The indices where we sit today, we'll call it 40 even, but it popped up to about 180, or let's say 160, make it even math. So that's a 4x increase. So think about your bread. What are you paying for bread? $2.50 a loaf some places. We'll say $3 if you're into some, pumpernickel loaf or something. A 4x increase would bring you to a $12 loaf of bread. Now these are not outside the realm of possibility based on past. Now a lot of people drink coffee. So coffee prices, currently our index is, let's say 50. We'll round it down a little bit, but it's been as high as 340, almost 350. So you're looking at what, a 7x increase in coffee prices? Now none of this is outside the realm of possibility. By using past indices to see and maybe gauge where the prices could go to, there's a significant amount of room for everything to move up. If you think it's really expensive now, that's not even expensive compared to prices paid in the past. So think about that in terms of like getting ready for these changes and prepping out for some of these changes. Because at that price point, then wages are going to be stagnant and everything else is running up. So $12 a loaf bread, $70 a tin coffee, $25 a pound steaks. That has happened in the past. So you have to consider, where it could go in the future and what type of supply chain disruptions you're looking at. I mean, everywhere the signal flares are up that things just aren't right anymore. So it's good for you to prepare and use that as a guide. So get more food now and things you can store for a longer time because they're definitely going up in price more. And the goal is to build a life that you don't need a vacation from. If you had this growing, you would not care about those prices because you could trade all of this for other things. If I had an extra tin of coffee and you brought me vegetables continuously that would cost me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in the store, and you rocked by my house twice in a month during the summer and dropped me a few $100s worth of veg out of there that's continuous, I for sure would give you tins of coffee in trade for that. And looking at this garden, you have really no idea how much food that is. That is a staggering amount of food that you're looking at. Staggering. And it continues to grow for 8 months, depending on where you are in the U.S. But I look at that and just, that is a money tree you're looking at, a money tree. So think about this in terms of your preps too. Do you have the wood? Can you get raised beds like that? Can you create the soils in there? How do you store and process your foods and keep that dehydrated, whatever? Can you find somebody you can trade with this? These are a million questions that need to be answered. And as we go through this winter time, you really want to start thinking about these preps. And if you can't, you might want to think about some storable food. My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030, that link's in the description box below. 3-month emergency food supply. And also, join us for Mini Ice Age Conversations every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, Revolution Radio. We send out our show notes of the topics we discussed. It's quick 10 bullet points so you can start the conversation. I do thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. See you next time. Bye for now.